Hello, so this is the next installment of MySQL with multiple spiders. So hopefully you've watched the first two videos where I have created 3 spiders, a set of MySQL database and started scraping some news websites. And if you want to see some more of that with some fine tuning, I'll be showing you all 3 spiders now working, inspecting the database, and then I will move on to backing up the database, deleting the database, and then restoring the database. So I'll provide some notes on that as well, and let's get on with it, shall we? So I'll do that, we'll run through it, and then at the end there's a little bit of a bonus feature. I'll take you on a walk outdoors in the misty, freezing UK, and we'll just have a little chat about APIs, databases, and oh yeah, I had a query from a subscriber asking me to investigate checking valid email addresses, and I'll talk about that as well. So if you'd like to see some code and some MySQL and some Scrapy, then let's get going. Hello everybody, so I'm just restarting my virtual machine, so you may not have seen this before. So yeah, I've got a laptop running Linux Mint, I've got a Windows 10 PC, I've got a Raspberry Pi. I do most of my Scrapy development on a Linux Mint 20.04 VM running on VMware Workstation. I find it quite useful because at the end of the day, I can pause the machine, the virtual machine, and the next day I unpause it, and yeah, I don't have to load Scrapy shell. I don't have to reopen my IDE. I've even got my response stored within Scrapy shell, as you can see there. So it's great. It's a good way to carry on where you left off, unlike being on a dedicated PC or laptop where you just have to start again the following day. Anyway, as you can see, I've been experimenting with XPATH selectors, XPATH using contains. So I've been looking for hrefs. The news sites are quite messy, really. When I say messy, there's no kind of consistent pattern to the news articles. So I forget which one this was. I was scraping. Which website was it? I think it might have been the Daily Express. Yeah, looks like it. Yeah, Daily Express. So what I was doing, I was looking for all the hrefs that contained news/UK, and once I'd found all of those hrefs, I was then actually getting the href. And what I will do, that was on I forget which spider it was, whether it was, I've done 3 if you've been watching the other videos, as I mentioned in the intro. Anyway, that's not really the important thing here. The main focus of this, as I say, is the fact that we've got 3 spiders. In fact, it's bugging me really, because when I started the project, I was only going to do 1, so I called it, I didn't put a number after it, but anyway, news spider, which is news spider 1, then 2 and 3. So yeah, you can see the publication there. That's spider 2, spider 3, a different newspaper. So these are all UK newspapers. Obviously the concepts I've shown here will apply to whichever newspapers in your particular country or region, whatever. I'm not going to go what I've done in previous, I'm not going to go over old ground, but I've actually added here publication. So because I'm using one items.py file ONE pipelines. This is the important thing, and this is the whole kind of emphasis of this video, is that you can use one pipelines file and only one class. If you look on Stack Overflow, you'll see people where they use an individual class for each spider, and obviously they've got their reasons. But if you don't want to, if you want to keep it kind of, I'm particularly aiming this at people who are probably taking the first or the second steps into using MySQL with Scrapy. And if you only want to, you only need to have one pipelines.py file, and also only one items.py file. So let me draw it. So we've got 3 spiders. Yeah, and you know I'm going to draw a spider, don't you? Arachnid, 8 legs. Oh, no, I've drawn 9. Excuse the spider of 9. So there's 3 spiders, and I'm using 3. Just 3 could be 300. I just mean multiple. And then they all go into through items.py, pipelines, and they end up in your MySQL. Don't worry, I'm going to show you this to the camera. You see that? So multiple spiders, 1 items, 1 pipeline, 1 database. There we go. That didn't take me 3 hours in Visio, did it? Right, next. We've looked at, you've already seen, number 1. Well, we yield the items. We yield items in each one. So, 2, yield items. Excuse me if I keep saying items. I've got items on the brain. 3 spiders, 1 items.py. So, items.py, just to recap, it's in the directory above by default, and there we see. So for each publication, whether it's 3, 10, 100 newspapers, they will all use these same fields, which gives us consistent data in the database, which is what we can now see. So I was testing this yesterday. You can see the first 10 results, publication was null, and then I added this. So, and what I could have done, I could have, it was quicker just to type independent. Well, I could have used a variable. I could have just put start URLs and then strip and replace and so on, but it's easier just to type it. I'm only doing 3 papers. If you were doing 300 and you were reading them all from CSV, then potentially that would be the better way to do it. So you can see, I think, let me zoom in on this, PHP myadmin. You can see I've been collecting the Guardian, the Express, and the Independent. We've got some timestamps there. Thanks to Alan Perfettini, who said that you can actually just create the timestamps with MySQL. You don't need to do it from Python. I'll show you where I'm doing it in Python. So in pipelines.py, I've been using this. So now equals datetime.now, and then I format it with year, month, date, into the format that I want. And then later on, posted is a timestamp, and formatted underscore date, posted. In actual fact, where does that come from? Posted is just a timestamp. Ah, yeah, so I don't actually need that. No. There we go. Sorry, posted. I'm inserting posted, and posted is, where is posted? Ah, yeah, timestamp. Yeah, that could actually come out. Let me just hash that out. The reason I'm showing you this is if you copy my code. Let's just, I just want to run that again, just check it still works. So, Scrapy CRON, new spider 3. And I know what this is going to do. Let me just check what I've done in pipelines.py, because in pipelines.py, have I now? Yes, I have. What I was doing originally was I was dropping table each time I run the spider, but obviously now I'm collecting data from 3 spiders. I don't want to drop the table each time I run a spider because I'm trying to add to it with each of the spiders. That looks okay. Let's just make that bigger so you can read it. First thing I always check is whether enabled pipelines, yeah, newz pipeline, so the pipeline worked. And let's check the database and see what we've got. So just refresh in phpMyAdmin. Oh, it's timed out. Get rid of the error. That's not an error. Well, it's not an error message, but it's oh. How many results am I showing? I'm showing 25 per page. Go on to page 2. And there we go. So yesterday was the 6th of January, and I was testing it 16/16. And yeah, today I've just got another 10 results. There's still some fine tuning to do because I'm just putting in story as a variable. I actually need to put in the correct selectors to get the stories. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to call it a day on actually showing you this demonstration, because as you can see, I still need to add to the selectors. So for instance, on here, I'm just putting in story, and what I need to do is carry on with my experimental work with the selectors to get the correct story from the Scrapy selector. And I think that's probably going to be harder work than it sounds. So that's why I'm kind of evading the issue for now. But what I really wanted to show you here was 3 or more spiders, 1 items.py file, and 1 pipelines file. And I don't even need that because it just works successfully without it, as you saw. So if you copy in my code, I'll put this up onto GitHub. I think the project's now called Scrapy 14. Each project I do, I just increment it. It's kind of, I think that's a good way, because over time then you can kind of see which projects are older and probably which ones, the newer ones, hopefully will be better. I hope you agree. If you don't, then, well, I'm not going to have a fight about it. So, anybody want a biscuit? Yeah, that's a bit disappointing. It broke. That's why you should never do things live. I might dub this over in case you don't want to hear people munching on a biscuit. Right, enough nonsense. Let's have a look at what I want to show you is how to back up the database. I know, yeah, very good idea. I've just thought of something that I can show you while I'm hunting around in my folders. You've probably all seen me promoting my website, which I've got no adverts on it. It makes me no money, but it's where it forces me to keep some neat notes, because if potential customers see it, or clients, whatever, it needs to look professional. So it forces me to be professional and keep my notes and code in a nice, neat format, and I like it. So here we go. Backup MySQL. This is effectively the second part of the video. So if you're not interested in MySQL, then sorry. It's probably just worth being aware of it, really, even if you don't use it, because sooner or later in the world of web scraping or just any kind of IT related things, you will be probably, if you run a website, even WordPress, MySQL is the back end. So for instance, if you had some hosting and then they sent you an annual bill and they doubled their charges, then you'd say, well, I don't want to use you anymore. So then you would think, well, I need to back up my website and I need to move it to a different host. And then you would probably want to be doing something like this, which is backup MySQL. And here we go. This is kind of, I've collected some notes, but I've actually, rather than just collect the notes and sort of test them, do it, and then forget it, I've documented it here for, I wouldn't say eternity, but you know, sudo mysql -u root -p. So that will prompt you for your password, and that's the administrator root password from when you set up your MySQL database. And that's very important. When you set up your database, do not forget your root password. If you do, let's just say you'll be doing a lot of Google searching and Stack Overflow, and it's not worth it. Write it down. Get yourself a black book, and then inside the back cover, write down the root password. Even write it in, you know, cryptography if you want, but don't forget it, whatever you do. So show databases. Then, as you see, I typed MySQL, but the next thing is actually MariaDB. And MariaDB is kind of the open source, the rebranded version of MySQL, and it's, to all intents and purposes, is the same syntax. It's not like Microsoft SQL or Postgres, how do you say it? So find your database name from your list of databases. So show databases, well, once you're into MariaDB, will show you all of your databases. Pick out the one you want. Mine's called newz. So then exit MariaDB, and then just from the command line, from bash prompt on Linux or from command line DOS, whatever it's called in Windows, mysqldump -u. So user1 is my username, and that's the username which has privileges to access my newz database. And -p is the password. It'll prompt you for the password. And then we've got the good old caret symbol, which means send this to that newzdump.sql. Then once you've run that, it should run without error. Then just to check it, you can do cat. Cat obviously is just how you can view the contents of any sort of text-based files in the Linux file system. So you do that, and then yeah, you can see I've done it there, highlighted in yellow, and then you get, there's pages of this, several pages, and I've put all the output here. This is, it looks kind of horrible, but really, you can see all of that is inside the dump, and that is good because that is what you want to recreate your database. So the next thing to do is to go into PHP MyAdmin, and you don't have to do it that way, but that's how I do it. Delete your database. Don't do this in production. This is why it's good to practice before production. Just do it while you're still kind of testing. To restore the backup of your database, and then rather than MySQL dump, which you did to create the backup, here you just do MySQL -u, which is just prompting for the username, user1, password, it's asking for the password, which you will then have to input, then is sending the dump back into newz. If you've gone into PHP MyAdmin and deleted your newz database, you will just have to create a new database, a new empty database with the same name. So I'm not a database expert by a long way, but this is kind of, hopefully this is the bare minimum that you will need. And this, trust me, this works. I did it yesterday. So it's all here. It's all on redandgreen.co.uk. And yeah, just go to blog and back up MySQL. The notes are all there. And just for completeness, I think what I'll do is I will flash up some notes and let you see them. So just bear with me for 1 second and I will show you some nice notes that you can refer to. And I'll probably put these up on GitHub as well if that's of interest. You've got them somewhere. Just talk amongst yourselves for a moment. Isn't that what teachers say? Yeah, we go. Death by PowerPoint. Well, there you go. I've just learned something. So, yeah, if any of you ever do the dreaded PowerPoint, you can choose the monitor. There's a little option and the slideshow where you can choose the monitor. So backup database, delete database, restore the backup. And lintut.com is where I've got some of my notes from. And here we go. So next slide. Back up the database. So mysql dump -u, then username. So on mine you saw user1. If your name is Mary Poppins, then Mary Poppins -p. That just asks or reminds, it prompts you for the password. If you don't pass it the password, then it won't work. So yeah. Caret, the caret goes that way because you are sending your database to a file called file.sql or something more meaningful. Delete the database, that's just in phpMyAdmin. You can do it also command line. Restore the database, MySQL -u, username, p, database, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, the caret goes the other way. So it's going that way, and you need to send the, so this file, this file, you can just, it will just export it to the local directory if you don't specify otherwise. Check the restored database, and there you go. So there's a little light bulb, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's recreated it and it's restored. This was what I did yesterday. So yeah, let me just, it sounds like I'm glossing over this, but let me just show you. I will just delete this. And no, I know what I'll do. Let me just show you on the Raspberry Pi, because the Raspberry Pi is actually my server, believe it or not, and it's doing a wonderful job, so no complaints. Let me just drag this across. And password. Yeah, there you can see newzdump.sql. I'll just show you what I did on this news dump. Yeah, there you go. That's what you saw in the screenshot. So really, that's just the entire contents of the database. So we've got that backup there. So we've got it. What I'm just going to do now, I've got, how many results? I've got 2 pages. Let's just 25 per page. If I just set that to 100, we should see all of our results just on the first page. 46. So if we go to operations, then we can go to delete the table. And you can see it is now gone. So if we just do refresh, empty, gone. We've lost our entire database, boo-hoo. So let's go and see if we can restore it. There we go. So we've got, bear in mind, this is only going to restore 10. I think we should only end up with about 10. I think it's 10. I'm just doing this to avoid lots of typing because I'm not very good at typing. Okay, so I think that was called, it was dump, wasn't it? newz.dump.sql. That was my more recent one. So MySQL, user one. And yeah, see, because I did a -p as for password. And I'll try to remember the password. I think it's password 1. Try again. And this is all very embarrassing because it's there we go, it worked. So once you put the right password in, very important. With MySQL, you can get in a right muddle with your passwords. So if you're on a Linux machine, you've got your user account on Linux, then you've got the root account on Linux. Then within MySQL, there's a MySQL root account, and then there's your user account in MySQL. So you could have 4 passwords. So yeah. Does anybody use KeePass DB? I don't write all my passwords in my black book, believe it or not. That's kind of well, I do when I'm developing stuff, but no, I wouldn't. No, I'm not that careless, shall we say. So yeah, if you remember, we had 46 results in MySQL. Sorry, in MySQL database called newz. And I've done a restore from yesterday's database. And tell a lie, it wasn't yesterday's database. It was, I think it was from a day or 2 ago. And it was from when I'd been really testing early on with only 1 spider. And so I had 10 results, and you can see the posted time there is 29th. So when you restore the database, it restores the posted time as well, which is good because you wouldn't want it to create new timestamps. So there we go. Right, I think that's enough kind of looking at the screens for now, and I'm just going to leave you with a little bit of chit chat from when I went out earlier on today, and thanks for watching. I hope this is interesting. In the next video, I probably will just tidy up the end of this project. I'll probably just do a summary showing you the database with maybe a couple of days results, and probably do some more on just show you some more XPATH selectors, because I don't think you can ever have too much knowledge of XPATH. It's powerful, but it can it can get complicated and it can baffle you at times. And I don't know if anybody else have noticed, but with XPATH, if you Google XPATH, especially when you're working in Scrapy, a lot of the XPath stuff is kind of specific to Selenium, XML, not Beautiful Soup, but there we go. So look, ahref, and I've been using Slice there. I think you saw that in the previous video, where the first 20 results were kind of just the links all across the top of the news site. So then I was getting the 30th to the 40th just to make sure I was getting proper stories. It's about -1. We're in January 2021. We're still in the middle of global pandemic. I think it's global still. It's terrible in the UK mainly due to incompetency of our government. And I hope I won't be shut down by saying that. Anyway, thanks for all the comments. The next thing, I've had a couple of people asking about the eBay API, and that's really cool. And if you've been doing any eBay projects using the API, hopefully you found them to be nice, the API to be very well documented,
because there's plenty of examples with Python code, and I don't know about you, but I think if you're learning something new, it's always nice to have an example actually written in Python rather than have to look at an example written in JavaScript or PHP or whatever. So yeah, eBay API, thoroughly recommend it. So you may have noticed that I've been covering APIs a little bit more recently, and obviously there's a reason for that. Web scraping can be very frustrating, and it's nice just to mix it up with some sites that have an API, and you can just get the JSON, convert. So with JSON, it's important to remember that JSON is not native to Python. So you do always need to convert the JSON object into a Python object or a Python dictionary object. Yeah, right. Next, I've had a request about. Sorry, too many ums and slow speaking. I'll speed up. Sorry about that. I've had a request to look at some code or write some code which actually checks whether email addresses are valid or not. And well, a quick Google search, and I found a website called hunter.io. And first thing that struck me was how expensive it was. I think it was, I don't know, $100 a month or something just to check. I think it was free to check 50 addresses, but who the hell just wants to check 50 addresses? You're going to want to check thousands potentially, aren't you? So if you go to hunter.io, I'm certainly not recommending them, and I'm certainly not getting any commission or anything. Look at that tree. It's nice, isn't it? Tree. It's like a document object model, but upside down, isn't it? Hunter.io, and if you look at it, what it does is it checks many different attributes of an email address, and then it gives you a score. The score obviously being an integer, or I think it's a percentage, might even be a float or a decimal, but it's a percentage which either says yes, this is valid, or no, it's not valid email address. And some of the things it's using is doing, I think it's doing curl to check whether the domain name exists. And I think probably that's a good idea for a project. It's obviously would have been looked at before, but I think probably just as a little mini project, try doing that without actually doing a Google search and seeing what everyone else has done, or looking on GitHub at anyone else's project, and actually, yeah, just try to check whether an email address is valid. To be honest, all you really care about is whether the domain name exists, whether it's John Doe or Mr. Moo at abc.com. That's not really critical. I suppose it could end up in an email spam filter if it's not a valid account on the mail server. But then we're getting into regular expressions, which is another good thing to be learning. You may have noticed that I avoid regular expressions where possible. It's because they're messy, difficult to understand at first glance, and there's often a neater way to do that, shall we say. But especially with verifying email addresses and domain names, regular expressions can do the job very nicely. So let's put that on the list, and in future I think that's quite a good idea, which will be a solution to that particular problem, and it won't be costing $99 per month or $300 per month. The prices in dollars for some of these services are just eye-watering. Yeah. Even I've looked at, I quite like animation. I've looked at sites where you can create your own animations and so on, and some of these are getting into hundreds of dollars a month, which is just I don't know about you, but in this country, certainly most of us couldn't afford that. Maybe if you're very wealthy and a millionaire or whatever, then good luck to you. But I'm not subscribing to anything, and if I can write something myself, I will. And just going to show you this. Going to walk through this without falling over. And I've got a feeling this could be quite... Yeah. Oh wow, that is deep. Look, that's where my foot just was, and much as I'd like to do some daredevil stunts for you on camera, I think I might have to give that a miss. So, where were we? We've talked about Scrapy with multiple spiders. We've talked about using curl with regular expressions to verify whether an email address exists or not. And really, when you're checking if email addresses exist or not, I suspect this will be with a view to mailing lists and so on. So we're probably talking about thousands of email addresses, are we? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, MySQL backup. Yeah, that's the last thing. So, MySQL backup. I first used MySQL about 20 years ago, longer than I really should be admitting to. I've only ever used it as a means to an end, not as a professional database person. So that's my disclaimer there. Right, so with MySQL, yesterday I'd forgotten, and I found the commands to do the MySQL dump to make a backup of the database, and I wasn't concentrating. I was listening to music and doing about three different screens open, and I was actually typing it within MySQL itself. So I'd done sudo MySQL -u, then my username and -p, and then it prompted me for the password, put in the password. Then I arrived at the MariaDB with the little sideways caret, and yeah, then I tried to type MySQL dump, and then I wondered why I kept getting errors. Don't do this. Don't. What you need to do is type MySQL dump from bash, or probably on Windows from the command prompt. So if you're rusty at MySQL or new to it, then don't do what I did. Yes, so MySQL dump, that will copy your entire database and tables within it. And if you look at my example, you'll see where I've used newz, newz, and this looks, wow, this is deep as well. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, MySQL dump. You can back up your database, and obviously we should all know why you need to do that. Corruption, hardware, human error, so on and so on. If you want to see the notes to this, go to redandgreen.co.uk and then go to blog, and as of January 2021, it's my most recent post. If you're watching this in 5 years' time, then obviously go back to January 2021. Right, mysqldump creates a dump of your database. Once you've done that, I just did a visual check using cat. So dump your database to spare database or database backup.sql. Give it a meaningful name that's obviously relevant to what your database is called and what it's doing. And yeah, then next, what you need to do is test if you can restore it, because there's no point having it and then I'm talking from experience here. You create a backup, the backup is actually perfect, and then one day you need to restore it. And this happened to me about 20 years ago with a Jazz drive. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Jazz and zip drives. A Jazz drive, it was kind of a square plastic kind of it was like a big floppy drive. So look up Jazz drive, you'll see what I mean. Anyway, we had this and I had a perfect backup on it, but we didn't have we had the software to restore it. But the software to restore it was not compatible with the version of the software which had created the backup. And by that time, Jazz Zip, I think the company was iOmega, they were no longer maintaining or putting links up to their restore, the correct version of the software that we needed to restore the backup. So we had a perfect backup, but we couldn't restore it. In the end, a clever colleague of mine ended up modifying the URL, or kept on trying different URLs and editing the URL of the download FTP site. And although it wasn't published with any links on the page, purely by sort of educated guess, he was able to amend the URL and then find the download for the correct restore software. Anyway, no such problems with MySQL, because we'll just end up with a .sql file which should be compatible with whatever SQL database you're trying to work with. Don't try MariaDB with Postgres. Or yeah, anyway, SQL. So you've got your SQL backup. Then what you need to do is, I did this in phpMyAdmin. So what I did was I went in and deleted my entire database, which the database that I deleted only had I think it only had actually the output from one spider at the time, and I think it only had about 10 results, so I wasn't really going to lose much if it all went wrong. So delete your database mine was called newz.py. Once you've deleted it, then just from the command line you do MySQL username, password, then name of the database. So if you delete the database completely and drop it, and you will just need to, in phpMyAdmin, go in and create a new database with the same name. So after deleting the database, there'll be no trace of it in phpMyAdmin. So within phpMyAdmin, make a new database, so it'll be empty with no tables. Once you've got that, then just go to MySQL -u-p, so on, and then you just pass it the name of the database, that would be newz on mine, and then you just do kind of the less than sign, less than operator. So it's the kind of sideways caret, as some people might call it. So you do the sideways caret, and once you've done the sideways caret, you put in the name of your backup, so it would be spare_db.sql, and then you press enter, and then check in phpMyAdmin and do a refresh. Can you see the canal's frozen over? That's it's not quite the Danube, but it'll do. It's about the best I can offer. So yeah, so then you've got your database, it's been restored, and everything's back to normal. And obviously what you'll also see is that all the timestamps and everything have been kept. So you've got your original timestamps, date modified, all that. So I know this has been a bit of a rant, no, not a rant, a ramble. It's been a ramble in cold, frosty countryside with mist, just to show that not everybody lives in sunny California. And we've covered web scraping with Scrapy, 3 spiders, 1 pipelines, 1 items.py. We've talked about requests from subscribers, including API, and also how to verify email addresses with an idea for a new project using curl and regular expressions to check domain names exist. And also you'd probably you look at hunter.io, and there's about 10 or 15 different checks that it makes, and it builds up an overall score. So there we go. MySQL database, so from bash or command line on Windows, mysqldump, and then to restore it you'd use mysql, and then with the less than symbol. So I think that's enough for now, and thank you for watching.